The instant Scarlet Taylor's hand touched my mailbox, the world seemed to pause. Then came the zap, a sharp crackle, a flash of blue, and the mighty president of our HOA jumped 3 feet backward like she'd grabbed a live snake. Her scream tore down Maple Creek Lane, sharp enough to wake every neighbor within 50 yards. She shook her hand, eyes bulging, hair frizzed from static, staring at my mailbox like it had just committed a crime against humanity. I stood at my window, coffee steaming in my hand, and whispered, "Lesson delivered." For months, Scarlet had been stealing my mail, quietly, confidently, the way people do when they believe the rules were made for other people. So I gave her a reminder that actions have consequences. The system was legal, non-lethal, and most importantly, unforgettable. But here's the twist. She wasn't stealing at random. No, she had a reason, tangled in grudges and HOA politics and something uglier that folks like to perfume with words like standards and character. 8 months before the jolt, Maple Creek Lane felt quiet and almost safe. I'd finally closed on my home, a modest 2-story colonial with a maple tree out front, a white fence, a mailbox that looked like Rockwell painted it on a Sunday afternoon. I'm Daniel Brooks, a black freelance designer who finally traded basement studios and coffee shop Wi-Fi for an office with morning light and a street where kids rode bikes and folks waved on their evening walks. For a while, it was perfect. Mornings smelled like cut grass. And the mail truck pulled up like clockwork. Paychecks, contracts, and the occasional Amazon impulse, a new router, a black hoodie, dropped into that little metal mouth while I sipped coffee on the porch. Then the mail started disappearing. At first it was junk, flyers, coupons, glossy political smiles promising the world. I shrugged it off. Then my bank statement didn't land. My insurance renewal vanished. My tax documents, those boring, sacred envelopes stamped. Important IRS correspondence, never showed. Losing 1 envelope is an accident. Losing 5 is sabotage. I filed a missing mail report and called the post office. A woman named Linda pulled my tracking. Everything shows as delivered to 127 Maple Creek Lane. "Sir, then either my mailbox is a portal," I said, "or someone's taken my mail." She chuckled reflexively, then went quiet, like she realized it wasn't a joke. By the next week, the consequences rolled in. Late fee, missed payment ding, a client asking why I hadn't signed a contract worth 50 grand. I stared out my office window at that mailbox, still, harmless, and felt a buzz in my teeth I've only felt 2 other times. The night my old landlord lost my rent check when the upstairs neighbor complained. My friends were too urban, and the day a cop pulled me over 2 blocks from my old apartment to ask whose car is this and where. "Are you going dressed like that?" I told myself. I was being paranoid. Then Helen, retired teacher, unofficial historian of Maple Creek, leaned on her cane and whispered like we were in church gossip. "That's strange. Dear Scarlet's been walking around checking mailboxes lately, says she's monitoring aesthetic compliance. You know how she is." We all knew. Scarlet Taylor, mid-50s, pastel blazers, pearls, a white Mercedes that sparkled even in the rain. She smiled like you'd failed a test you didn't know existed. She once fined a neighbor $50 for garbage cans out 3 hours too long, called security on a teenager whose hoodie made her uneasy, and told a Vietnamese family their door color wasn't community appropriate because it telegraphed a storefront vibe. Folks called her concerned. I called her controlled by control. I needed proof, not outrage, so I hid a motion-activated pinhole camera inside a little wooden birdhouse next to my mailbox. It had a perfect angle. Tested the lens by fake grabbing my own mail, and it worked flawlessly for 3 days. Nothing. Then on the 4th, at 2:37 p.m. on a sunny Wednesday, the footage changed everything. Her Mercedes eased to the curb. She stepped out with her clipboard, the tyrant scepter, looked left, right, and walked straight to my mailbox. No gloves, no disguise, just Scarlet doing her daily round of federal crimes like she'd been deputized by God himself. She opened the lid, thumbed through the stack, cherry-picked 3 envelopes, tapped them on her palm, dropped the rest back in, and glided away. Her face was calm, professional, offended that paper dared exist beyond her approval. I watched 4 more clips that week, different times. Same choreography: scan the street, pluck the important ones, leave the coupons and local ads. When she paused long enough to read a return address from my biggest client, that flicker of targeted intention punched through my chest like a nail. I printed screenshots, the ring on her finger circled in red, the HOA badge on her lanyard, the timestamp burned into the bottom right, and I took a stroll to her porch. Big white columns, flowers in perfect soldier's lines. She opened the door with a smile that bounced off me like rubber. "Daniel! Everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I said, lifting the stack of photos, "except for you taking my mail." Her smile faltered for a flicker. Then she laughed, airy and practiced. "Stealing? Oh no, I was ensuring misdelivered letters reach their intended owners. You know how the carriers get mixed up, especially with all the new residents." She let it hang there like a polite slur. "They're different colors," I said evenly. "And you live on Oak Ridge. Brad, golf shirt." Lawyer jaw appeared behind her. "You accusing my wife of a crime? That's defamation. HOA doesn't tolerate troublemakers." "I have video," I said. He leaned forward, eyes crawling over me like a scanner at a store exit. "Then watch who you show it to." "Son." They shut the door. The next afternoon, I got an email. HOA notice of violation, unauthorized surveillance. Equipment visible from public property. Scarlet had tried to turn my evidence into a weapon. It made a familiar heat settle in my stomach, the kind that's older than me. The moment you realize someone in power can do wrong in public and expect you to apologize for seeing it. At the station, Officer Ramirez, tired eyes, kind voice, watched the clips and rubbed his chin. "This is compelling, but unless we recover the mail or prove intent, it's gray. Try the postal inspectors, but it could take weeks." "So she can just keep doing it?" He sighed. I walked out with that special American feeling. I'd asked for help and got a pamphlet. Scarlet's retaliation landed before I got home. Failure to maintain community. Mailbox standards. Fine $100. The fine listed security concerns reported by multiple neighbors. I knew what that meant. The last HOA meeting I'd attended ended with Scarlet saying into the mic, "We must preserve the character of Maple Creek. Not everyone appreciates order." A man behind me whispered, "Used to be quiet round here." A woman added, "People move in and bring different habits. It's like racism learned Latin, everything in code, nothing in plain English." That night, listening to cicadas and sprinklers and Scarlet's laughter 2 doors down, I opened my laptop and researched mailbox protection, non-lethal deterrence, signage, liability. I didn't need a revenge machine. I needed a boundary with teeth. I called Marcus, my old college roommate and an electrical engineer who believes stupidity is best treated with instruction. "You ever electrify a mailbox?" I asked. "Not yet," he said, "but let's teach somebody about boundaries." We mapped a tiny system powered by a 12-volt battery and a capacitor-based pulse. A sharp, static slap. Not harm. A warning beep would sound first. Clear. Documented notice. We'd shield the circuit in a weatherproof box under the post, run a reed switch on the lid, add a daytime USPS disarm window, and put a visible sign. "Property protected. Do not touch electric." Deterrent installed, Marcus scrawled a schematic. On a napkin like a thief with a conscience. We soldered 2 nights straight. Marcus volunteered his finger for testing because loyalty covers a multitude of bad ideas. He yelped, grinned, and said, "Perfect, humility, and memory." We set a second camera with audio, calibrated the beep to be undeniable but not cruel, and logged everything in a folder labeled Operation Mail Shock. Emailed Officer Ramirez, documenting reasonable measures taken to protect property given ongoing theft. He replied, "Understood. Log everything." Sunday night, we mounted the birdhouse, tucked the brain under the post, and bolted on the sign. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the knowledge this wasn't only about mail. It was about who's allowed to say no to you when you're certain you're the exception. Monday morning, I brewed coffee and staged decoys, a faux bank crest, a law firm-looking envelope, a client-style contract in a crisp manila sleeve. The postman came, tipped his cap, and left. The daytime disarm worked perfectly. Afternoon heat made the asphalt sing. Mrs. Peterson watered her hydrangeas and waved. Her little dog yipping, a kid in a red cape streaked by on a bike. I watched the feed with the focus I use when pitching a six-figure. Rebrand. Then Scarlet's Mercedes nosed into the lane like it owned the deed. She stepped out with that clipboard and that walk, the one that says I am the policy. She glanced up at my sign, lips twitching as if reading the words insulted her education. She smoothed her blazer, opened the lid, and plucked the decoy with the faux crest. She paused, mouth tightening with satisfaction. She reached deeper. The warning beep sang sharp and theatrical. This is not for you. She froze, eyes narrowing, then flashed that I dare you look at an inanimate object, and stuck her other hand in. The shock popped. Her body jerked back. Blazer flaring, clipboard skittering across my walkway. She shrieked, surprise braided with outrage and a dash of I'm the victim here, and shook her hand as if she could fling shame to the grass. Doors opened up and down. Maple Creek smartphones rose like sunflowers. Someone called, "You okay?" With the tone of a person who prays the answer is both yes and no. Scarlet spun toward my porch, shoes punching divots in my lawn, and hammered my door like a prosecutor late for court. I opened with the calm of a man who rehearsed in the mirror. She launched into volume. "You booby-trapped your mailbox. You assaulted me. This is a hazard to the community, especially vulnerable residents." Translation: people like you are the hazard. I pointed to the sign. It's right there. Brad arrived, camera up. Legal chin raised. My wife was conducting official HOA business. Your mailbox exhibits non-compliance with community appearance norms. We've had security complaints. I laughed. Not big. Just enough to chip his pride. Brad, you can regulate fence colors and the diameter of a hydrangea. But you don't own federal property, and you can't turn theft into an inspection by stapling it to a clipboard. "I'm calling the police," Scarlet snapped. Voice razor sharp. "You'll be arrested for assault." "Fantastic," I said. "They can watch months of your theft on 4 cameras. I'll email the postal. Inspectors while they're here. For the first time something wobbled in her face. She looked at Brad. Brad looked at me like a man who finally read the fine print on a grenade. 15 minutes later, 2 cruisers arrived. Deputy Harris stepped out, tall, calm, a man who's seen HOA wars without choosing a side prematurely. "Okay," he sighed. "Who's first?" "Scarlet went full Broadway. She made me electrocuted." "He's dangerous." "He's making this neighborhood unsafe. People cheered when we moved here, and now look at it. He just doesn't fit the Maple Creek way." Harris blinked once and said, "Ma'am, why were you touching his mailbox?" Her lips parted. Then she reached for the word inspection. The deputy turned to me, and I handed him a flash drive. Footage from 4 cameras. Officer, 2 months of theft. Timestamps? Close-ups, Scarlet gasped. Fabricated? Harris's voice flattened. "Ma'am, tampering with mail is a federal offense. If this is what it looks like..." Stop talking. He watched the clips in his car. The neighbors quieted. The part where she got zapped made him bite back a laugh. He returned the drive and handed me a copy of his report. "Mr. Brooks, your signage is clear. The device is non-lethal. The daytime USPS window is documented. You're within your rights." He turned to Scarlet. "Mrs. Taylor, consider this a formal warning. If I get another call about you touching that mailbox, our next conversation is with a federal agent." Color drained from her face. Brad muttered, "Let's go," like a man done wrestling a hurricane. Scarlet pointed at me, trembling. "You'll regret this. You've made an enemy of the entire HOA." "Then I guess I'll need more wire," I said. Someone snorted. Mrs. Peterson whispered, "About time somebody told her no." You could see the crown slide off Scarlet's head in real time. That night, my phone rang. "Mr. Brooks, Agent Rogers, U.S. Postal Inspection Service. Deputy Harris forwarded your report. We'll need copies of your footage. This appears part of a larger pattern." Larger pattern. He was right. By morning, the clip leaked onto social. Caption: HOA President meets. Electric accountability, because suburbia runs on yard signs and gossip. The cul-de-sac turned into a theater. People whispered stories. Missing birthday checks, misdirected prescriptions, a habit of HOA accidentally. Losing complaints filed by certain families. The phrase hung there, not everyone, like smoke. You could taste it, but folks pretended it was incense. 2 black sedans rolled in at noon with gold. Letters on the windshield. United States Postal Inspection Service. Rogers thanked me for the files and started knocking. Doors? Some neighbors hesitated. There's a kind of fear you learn when you've watched a person with a gavel turn. Preference into punishment. Others were ready. She told me our porch looked crowded, said Mrs. Peterson. That's because my daughter and her kids visited, added her son-in-law, shaking his head. She sent a note about extra vehicles when our family came for Sunday. Dinner, said Mr. Alvarez. We never got our HOA ballots, said the Nguyans, and my wife got a letter about appropriate garden choices after she planted cassava. By noon, a sheriff's cruiser idled at Scarlet's curb. Rogers walked up, held out a paper. Mrs. Taylor, federal search warrant for suspected possession of stolen U.S. mail. Scarlet's face moved through outrage, disbelief, and the specific panic of a person who thought the rules were a mirror and now realizes it's a window. This is harassment, she snapped. I'm the one protecting this community from disorder, ma'am, Rogers said evenly. Step aside. Brad appeared with the look of a man who finally stopped pretending the river isn't flooding. Cooperate, he said. She spun on him. You told them. No, he said, voice flat, but maybe I should have years ago. You could hear power crack. Agents carried boxes out, literal boxes of mail, some still sealed, some slit, some stacked by name and date. Jenkins, Peterson, Alvarez, Miller, Nguyen, Brooks. They found a spreadsheet with tabs. Non-compliant, chronic, payment. Notes like, watch porch, check bank, divert to temporary hold, Rogers said softly. Not impulse, it's systematic. Scarlet tried a new mask. I was cataloging delivery errors. Someone had to ensure integrity. Mrs. Peterson's voice cut across the grass like a bell. You stole my husband's last birthday card. The block went quiet. Rogers kept moving. The cuffs clicked. Polite as silverware. Brad rubbed his temple and said to no one, I told her to stop. As they passed me, she hissed, You think you've won? You ruined my life. I tilted my head. No, your spreadsheet did. I just put a sign on a box. The cul-de-sac applauded. Not cruelty, relief. People shook my hand in the way folks do when they realize the thing they accepted can be changed if someone refuses to play along. That afternoon, Rogers returned. We recovered mail going back almost 4 years. Checks, legal notices, prescriptions. She kept most of it. The pattern gave her power. He glanced down at his notes. We even found a drawer labeled Ungrateful Residents. I exhaled, half laugh, half prayer. Brad filed for divorce the next day. He stopped at my curb, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than his voice. She thought the HOA made her untouchable, he said. Power's funny, I said. It borrows your name until you can't see yourself. He glanced at the sign on my post and actually smiled. Guess someone finally touched it back. Federal agents delivered. Stacks of recovered mail the next morning. The street became a reunion. People opened envelopes like time capsules. Mrs. Peterson found a card her late husband mailed 2 years before he passed. To my forever girl. Keep smiling, it read inside in shaky script. She cried on her porch and whispered, You brought him back to me. And my chest hurt in a way that isn't pain. It's proof. The HOA board met that evening. Scarlet's nameplate was gone. replaced by acting chair. The room felt like a church the day after the storm windows hold, humble and determined. People, some who'd never spoken in meetings, stood and said words like transparency, accountability, fairness, term limits. They asked me to run for a seat. I said, I prefer wiring things, not managing them, and they laughed in a way that didn't feel like a joke at all. The headlines came, HOA president charged in federal mail theft ring. The clip of her jump racked up views. The comments were messy, some cheering, some clutching pearls about booby traps, some reminding everyone, a black man defending his property is always judged. Twice, but the facts kept winning. Scarlet pled guilty when the mountain wouldn't move. Her lawyer tried. Phrases like emotionally overwhelmed by civic duty and misdirected vigilance. The judge said, mail theft is not community service, and sentenced her to 2 years, restitution, and permanent removal from the board. She stared at the table. No pearls. No power like a child who ran out of lies. I left the courthouse to microphones. Mr. Brooks, do you feel vindicated? I said I just wanted my mail and my neighbors to get theirs. Maple. Creek exhaled. The HOA held a real election with real turnout. Helen, the retired teacher who leads with her, listening won by a mile. Her first act. Cancel nonsense fines, restore records, publish the budget. Her second, a community potluck that turned into therapy. Someone brought a cake shaped like a mailbox with lightning bolts and frosting that made kids squeal. Marcus clinked a bottle to mine. To voltage and boundaries, and to never underestimating the power of a well-placed capacitor, I said. He grinned. And a well-placed sign. They amended the bylaws. No board member may access private resident data, mailboxes, or deliveries. Clear complaints process. Term limits. Required de-escalation training. And a clause that made folks cheer. No action may be taken in the name of community character without enumerated criteria and evidence. Plain English? Dog whistles don't pass as votes anymore. People started receiving returned items over the next weeks. Each envelope told a story of inconvenience or heartbreak or quiet anger. But the returns did more than fix mistakes. They revealed a pattern folks could finally name. Several families shared how they'd been written up more. How visitor cars at their houses drew security emails. How their porch lights attracted unwanted attention. A phrase that isn't about light at all, we talked. It out on porches and in the grass and at the new movie night where kids sprawled on blankets. And nobody was told their music was too much. There was one more twist. A white SUV slowed in. Front of my house 6 months later and rolled away, a drive-by glare I recognized. The look of someone who lost power and came back to see if the door was still locked. The next morning, a postcard arrived. No return address. Just my name in familiar loops. A photo of gray buildings behind a chain-link fence. The caption, Federal Correctional Institution. Greenville. The message, you ruined my life. But I still think you cheated. Scarlet. I pinned it to my corkboard above a photo of my mailbox gleaming in afternoon sun and wrote with a Sharpie, Accountability Conducts. That evening, I sat on the porch and watched families stroll. Same street, new weather, people waved. Someone called, Hey, Daniel, you're a legend. I raised my mug and said, Just an electrician for justice. And the laughter that followed felt like a neighborhood healing itself. I thought about how small acts of power turn monstrous when no one pushes back. How easy it is to hide bias under paperwork. How often people like me are asked to be twice as polite to get half as far. How many times Scarlet used words like standards, character, and security when she meant something else entirely. Didn't defeat her with rage. I defeated her with boundaries, literal and legal. And that's a kind of poetry I can live with. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive as a speech or a clean headline. Sometimes it hums at 12 volts, sings a warning beep, and asks a simple question. Whose hands do you think this belongs to? I looked at my mailbox one last time that night. It stood there small and innocent and stubborn, my little monument to peaceful resistance. A camera watched, but not to catch anyone. To remind me visibility isn't the opposite of privacy when you choose it yourself. This whole ordeal taught me something I didn't expect from an HOA saga. Boundaries aren't only about property lines. They're about dignity, about refusing to let people take what's yours, whether it's mail, money, time, or the right to stand on your own porch and not be treated like a suspect. Scarlet thought power meant control. Real power is restraint, knowing when to fight, how to fight, and doing it without becoming the thing you're resisting. So if you've got a Scarlet in your neighborhood, remember, silence feeds them, documentation and persistence defeat them. Add a little creativity and sometimes justice shows up with a spark. And if someone tells you don't fit the character of a place, smile the kind of smile that knows character isn't offense. It's how you treat people inside it.